Yes.
Here we are at Little Bay, one of the central beaches and one of the focuses for the Arakoon State Recreation Area. There's a great little beach over here. When I first came here maybe 35 years ago, this area has been cleared. People lived around here, but when I think they were on leasehold, and when the leases went out, it came back to national parks. And the whole hillside here was cleared because on the other side of the hill is the jail. And the jail was built as a sort of model prison, but what they thought would be a good idea was to clear all the vegetation off the hill so they could see if the prisoners were about to escape. Part of the infrastructure of the jail is at the headwaters of this little gully. There's a dam called the Overshot Dam, and there's a pipeline runs right through here which took water to the jail. And so this area has been quite disturbed for quite a long time because the jail was built in the 1880s, 1890s. So in that time, quite a few weeds have got in here and quite a few things were planted. So they've got quite a lot of coral trees still growing over the road here. They're gradually being removed by national parks. But this area where we're standing here now used to have a lot of coral trees all the way through here, and they've gradually been removed. And when I first came here, there were lots of lantana through here, but now what we're getting is a lot of the garden escapes because there's quite a few houses on the other side of this wetland. So you've got this Watsonia, which is like a gladioli, so you get those along these disturbed edges. But you can see the palms, they're all relatively new from the last 20 years. They're starting to colonise as we're getting rid of the weeds. And in the middle of this wetland we have a terrible vine called Madiera vine, and that's washed down from the Overshot Dam, and some of the tubers have ended up in the middle of the rainforest and now they're starting to grow. So we're trying to tackle them, clean up these edges so that this becomes stable and resists weed invasion. We also have some native vines, and here we have a very mature vine, and that one goes right the way to the top of the canopy. In this area, if we can get a really good canopy and cut off the light to the ground here, that'll suppress a lot of these Madeira vines until we can get in here and control them. You can see how flexible that is. It's very soft, and that's one of the adaptations that vines use. They don't use a lot of energy producing woody material. They depend on other plants to give them the support to get up to the sunlight. So what happens is you get lots of little seedlings will be germinating on the ground, and every now and then one gets up onto a woody plant, and away it goes up into the canopy. So it's no point in just cutting this stem off and poisoning it, because the aerial part will just keep growing because it's got enough energy within the stem for the plant to keep going up into the canopy and producing tubers. So what we do is we try and poison as much of the stem as we can. If you've got a saw or a blade of your secateurs, just scrape it down like that so you expose the conductive tissue, and then you put herbicide on there as quickly as you can, trying not to drip any, because you don't want herbicide in the ground. So what's happening now is that's soaking into the stem and hopefully being translocated up and down the stem. The tubers that are up in the tree, if we try and disturb the vine, then the tubers will drop down and they'll all grow. So what we're trying to do is get the herbicide to go into the tubers and kill them, so that when they eventually do drop, they're not viable. So that's how we treat a single stem plant that's going up into the tree. And you can see here the tubers just starting to appear here. As far as we can reach, we try and get herbicide onto that. Here's a fairly big infestation. There's all these lower tubers. I'll just pull them off just to get them dealt with before I scrape it and paint it. Here is a little bunch of tubers coming down. I will remove that so that at least that one won't drop and go everywhere. Make sure you get each each stem that's going up into the canopy. And even though the stems are quite small down here, Madeira vine is interesting in that you can have a small stem on the ground, and as they get up into the light, the stem can get thicker and they can actually be quite vigorous plants further up. The idea with all cutting and painting or cutting and scraping techniques is you get the herbicide on as quickly as you can before the plant can seal off and stop the herbicide from getting in. So we're using 360 gram glyphosate on this so that we get a good kill rate. Up here there are just lots of tubers up in the canopy which we can't get, but I can see some more stems coming down here which I will treat. But what happens is that rains down, and then if you look directly below where all those tubers are hanging up in the sky, you'll see a carpet of young Madeira vines. See, there's a root just started to take root there, but they've got quite a lot of food stored in this so that the plant can get quite a vigorous stem up even without having a root system developed. And then once it gets to a certain size up a tree, even if you pull this out from the ground, the stem keeps growing and the plant keeps growing. So they are a bit of a monster plant. You could spray this, but we've got quite a few native plants in amongst it. So if we have the people around to hand weed them, much better to do that. Plus we're in a wetland, so you know, you can't really go spraying herbicides in wetlands. There's a tuber. Just started. They're quite small tubers, and they're just starting to disappear. You know, they're using up the food reserves. At the moment, we've got 12 people working in this area, and this is part of our visiting volunteer program. This group's from Sydney, and they're working on average 4 or 5 hours a day. So, you know, if you've got 10 people working for 4 hours, you get quite a bit of work done. Alan, the key to this sort of work is being extremely gentle, isn't it? Yes, particularly as this is a very brittle plant, and roots at the nodes. You can spend a lot of time lifting the roots, but of course if one breaks off, you've got a fair chance that it will regrow. So at least doing this method, the herbicide's going to hopefully get translocated up and down the stem. Okay, here we've got a fairly large vine started with tubers are forming already low down. So what I'll do is I'll just remove these tubers low down so I can scrape it. So we'll get rid of the ones that are easily reached. There's no point in just cutting this off here and poisoning it, because the part that's growing up above us will keep going, and in my experience there's probably a large tuber underneath here which will also reshoot. So what I'm going to do here is I'll start scraping from the top and applying herbicide and work my way down to the stump, and that way hopefully I'll get sufficient herbicide on here to make this a very unhappy plant. And good just to do, you know, sort of 1 arm length stretches so you can get the herbicide on as quickly as you can. Doesn't matter if you miss a few spots. It will take months sometimes for the plant to really show the effects. There we go. So we just leave that there and let the plant move the herbicide around and hopefully kill all those tubers up in the tree. Now hearing that whip bird in the background. If you ended up with a very big Madeira vine infestation, the weight of these tubers when they get up to the top, they have the capacity to pull all these trees over, because there's a huge amount of weight that they get up in the canopy. You get a bit of wind coming through, wet soil, and these trees, this one hasn't come down because of Madeira vine, but it ends up you can crash the whole system down and just get a vine thicket of weedy vines, which won't be very good for whipbirds or many of the other things that the native animals that depend on these little forests to survive.